Most people ran without thinking. They didn't stop to look back. They didn't ask questions. They just ran. Because when the warning came through, it was short, sharp, and terrifying. A dangerous animal had escaped from the zoo. In seconds, calm turned into chaos. People scattered in every direction, driven by pure instinct. Fear took over. Survival mode kicked in. But not everyone could run. Near the edge of the crowd, an elderly woman stood frozen in place. Her body refused to move the way her mind begged it to. Her legs were weak. Her breath came shallow. And as the people around her disappeared, she realized something terrifying. She was completely alone. The streets that had been full just moments earlier were suddenly empty. Every step she tried to take felt heavier than the last. She knew she couldn't outrun danger. She knew she couldn't hide in time. And for a brief moment, she believed this was how it would end. Then, something changed. She felt it before she saw it. Movement. Presence. One shape appeared nearby. Then another. Then another. Dogs. Not barking. Not running away. Not panicking like everyone else. They moved toward her. Slowly. Deliberately. They didn't pass her. They didn't flee. They stopped, and stayed. As fear closed in from every direction, the elderly woman realized something unbelievable. She wasn't alone after all. And what these dogs did next stunned even the authorities. Earlier that day, nothing felt unusual. The city had woken up the way it always did, busy, familiar, predictable. Families moved through the streets. People chatted, laughed, checked their phones. Life followed its normal rhythm. The elderly woman had started her day the same way she had for years. She wasn't in a hurry. She never was. Her steps were careful, measured, shaped by age and time. She walked with the patience of someone who had learned that rushing rarely led to anything good. Every movement carried the quiet weight of experience. She lived nearby. Close enough to the zoo that the sounds of it had become part of her world. Children laughing. Occasional animal calls drifting on the air. It had always felt safe. Familiar. That morning, she had gone out for something simple. A short walk. A moment of fresh air. Nothing more. She had no idea how quickly that ordinary routine would be shattered. Not far from where she stood, dogs wandered through the area as they often did. Some belonged to nearby homes. Some belonged to no one at all. They moved freely, unnoticed, blending into the background of daily life. Most people barely paid attention to them. A passing glance. A quick step around them. But dogs notice things humans don't. They notice changes in the air. Shifts in energy. Tension that hasn't yet found words. Long before the panic began, something had already felt wrong. The woman sensed it too, though she couldn't explain why. A quiet unease. A feeling that the world had paused, holding its breath. Still, nothing prepared her for what would come next. Because in a matter of moments, the ordinary would disappear. and everything she thought she knew about safety would be tested. The first sign that something was wrong didn't come from screams. It came from confusion. People stopped walking. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. Faces turned toward the same direction, all searching for answers. Then the message spread. A dangerous animal had escaped from the zoo. At first, some didn't believe it. They laughed nervously. Assumed it was a drill. A mistake. But doubt didn't last long. The urgency in the warnings was impossible to ignore. People were told to leave the area immediately. To move fast. To get to safety. Panic followed instantly. What had been calm moments before turned into a rush of bodies moving all at once. People pushed forward. Others shouted warnings. Some froze, unsure which direction was safest. Fear doesn't move logically. It moves suddenly. The elderly woman watched it all unfold around her. She tried to step forward, but her legs didn't respond the way they used to. Her balance wavered. The ground felt unsteady beneath her feet. People passed her without stopping. Not out of cruelty. Out of terror. Each second, the crowd thinned. Each second, the space around her grew wider and emptier. She reached out once, hoping someone might notice. But no one did. Everyone was focused on one thing: escape. As the last of the crowd disappeared, silence replaced the chaos. The kind of silence that feels heavy. Dangerous. She stood there, exposed, knowing she couldn't outrun what was coming. And for the first time that day, real fear set in. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that sinks deep and refuses to let go. She was alone. And whatever had escaped, was still out there. The silence around her felt unnatural. Just minutes ago, the streets had been full of life. Now, they felt abandoned, like the world had moved on without her. The elderly woman stood still, afraid that even the smallest movement might make things worse. Her heart pounded harder with every passing second. She could feel it in her chest, heavy and relentless. She tried to think. Should she hide? Should she sit down? Should she try to move, even if it hurt? Every option felt wrong. Her body ached with the quiet reminders of age, stiff joints, fragile balance, the slow response time she had learned to live with. Running was impossible. And staying where she was felt just as dangerous. She looked around, hoping to spot someone, anyone, who might still be nearby. But there was no one. The fear she felt wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady. Cold. Settling in her stomach like a weight she couldn't lift. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly vulnerable. Memories flashed through her mind, small moments, ordinary moments, things she never thought she'd revisit like this. She thought about how quickly life could change. How a normal day could turn into something unrecognizable. She whispered a quiet prayer under her breath. Not for miracles. Just for time. Then she noticed movement. Not fast. Not threatening. Just there. She turned her head slowly, afraid of what she might see. And that's when she realized, something was approaching her. Not from one direction, but from several. At first, she thought her fear was playing tricks on her. But then she saw them clearly. One dog stepped forward. Then another. Then more. Not strays. Not wandering pets. These were trained canine dogs. 14 of them. They moved with purpose, controlled, alert, and focused. Their posture was disciplined. Their eyes sharp. Every step deliberate. They didn't rush. They didn't hesitate. They spread out around her, forming a wide, protective circle. 14 bodies. 14 pairs of eyes scanning the surroundings. Each dog positioned carefully, as if they had done this before. The elderly woman felt her breath catch. She had expected fear. She had expected noise. She had expected chaos. But what surrounded her now was something entirely different. Calm. The dogs stood their ground, muscles tense but still, ears lifted, attention fixed outward, away from her. None of them touched her. None of them crowded her. They were guarding her. She didn't understand why. She didn't know where they had come from or who they belonged to. But she understood one thing instantly. These dogs had chosen her. Trained canine units are taught to protect, to assess threats, to prioritize life. And somehow, in the middle of confusion and danger, they had identified her as someone who could not escape on her own. One dog stepped slightly closer, positioning itself between her and the open street. Another adjusted its stance, watching a different direction. The others followed suit, silently coordinating without a single command spoken aloud. It was instinct shaped by training. Discipline guided by purpose. The woman felt tears well in her eyes, not from fear this time, but from disbelief. Moments earlier, she had been abandoned by circumstance. Now, she was surrounded by 14 living shields. Her hands trembled as she slowly lowered herself, afraid her legs might give out. The dogs didn't move. They stayed. She realized something profound in that moment. These animals weren't reacting out of panic. They weren't confused. They were prepared. And whatever danger had escaped, it was no longer approaching an unprotected woman. It was approaching 14 trained canine dogs who had already decided. Nothing was getting past them. Time seemed to slow around them. The elderly woman stayed perfectly still, afraid that any sudden movement might break whatever fragile balance now existed. Her breathing was shallow. Her hands rested tightly in her lap. The 14 canine dogs, however, were anything but fragile. Their focus sharpened. One by one, their heads turned in unison, reacting to something the woman could neither hear nor see. Their bodies stiffened, not with fear, but with readiness. They had detected something. The woman followed their gaze, her heart sinking as she realized the threat was closer than she had hoped. Whatever had escaped was no longer distant. The dogs adjusted their formation. 2 stepped forward slightly. Others widened the circle. Every movement was controlled, silent, and intentional. This was not confusion. This was training taking over. The dogs did not bark. They did not lunge. They held their ground. Low tension vibrated through the air, an unspoken warning to anything watching from the shadows. The kind of warning only experienced working dogs know how to give. The woman felt fear return, creeping back into her chest. She knew the dogs were trained. She knew they were strong. But she also knew they were facing something unpredictable. Minutes passed. Each one felt heavier than the last. The dogs remained locked in position, eyes scanning, ears flicking at every sound, every shift in the environment. Not one of them turned away from their post. Then one dog stepped forward. It planted itself firmly, muscles tense, stance unyielding. The others followed, tightening the perimeter. It was clear now. The danger was near enough to be confronted. The woman closed her eyes for a brief moment, whispering another quiet prayer, not just for herself this time, but for the dogs standing between her and whatever was coming. And as the threat drew closer, one truth became impossible to ignore. These dogs were prepared to face it. Not for glory. Not for reward. But because that was what they had been trained to do. And because, in that moment, she was under their protection. Time seemed suspended. The elderly woman could barely breathe, her heart hammering as her eyes darted toward every shadow, every movement in the distance. Then it happened. The formation of 14 canine dogs, each perfectly positioned, caught the attention of the authorities first. A sharp-eyed officer noticed the unusual circle, the precision of their stance, and the complete calm amidst the chaos. Over there, someone shouted. "Get a look at those dogs." Suddenly, the scene shifted. The focus moved from scattered civilians to this singular, disciplined group surrounding one woman. The escaped animal, sensing the change in energy, hesitated. Its unpredictable movements slowed as the dog's silent command of the space created a barrier it couldn't ignore. The officers moved cautiously, guided by the dog's positions. The woman watched in disbelief as her protectors coordinated instinctively, her life suddenly tethered to 14 pairs of sharp, alert eyes. No barking, no unnecessary movement, just precision. Each dog knew its role. Each dog maintained the perimeter. And the animal, the very thing that had triggered panic seconds ago, was now carefully monitored, contained by the presence of these incredible creatures. Time seemed to stretch. Moments felt like minutes. Then, with one subtle signal, a shift in stance, a flick of an ear, the dogs communicated without words. Rescue teams followed their lead. They approached, slowly, safely, guided by the animals who had already taken command of the situation. In that moment, the impossible became clear, the chaos could be contained, and the woman could survive. All because 14 trained canine dogs had chosen to act, to stand their ground, to protect without hesitation. And just like that, the tide turned. Fear gave way to hope. Panic transformed into careful coordination. And the woman realized the unbelievable truth. She was no longer alone, and her protectors were not going to let anything harm her. The tension began to lift, almost imperceptibly at first. The officers moved carefully, following the silent guidance of the 14 canine dogs. Each step they took was measured, deliberate, trusting the instincts of these remarkable animals. The elderly woman felt her knees weaken as a kind officer reached her side, offering a steady arm. She gripped it tightly, still in awe of the dogs surrounding her. They had not moved a muscle, not even as humans stepped in to guide her to safety. The crowd, still reeling from the earlier panic, began to notice the scene. Whispers spread through the streets, stories of courage, loyalty, and a calm that had not been expected in the middle of chaos. The escaped animal was contained. The immediate danger passed. Relief washed over the woman in waves she hadn't realized she was holding back. She exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours, her shoulders dropping, tension leaving her body. And the dogs? They didn't rush forward to be patted. They didn't seek praise or attention. They simply stood their ground until the last possible moment. Then, slowly, almost reluctantly, they allowed the humans to escort her away. People watching were stunned. Shocked. Amazed. It's like they knew exactly what to do, someone whispered. Yes, another replied. And who they were protecting. The woman looked back, tears brimming, seeing 14 pairs of eyes still scanning, still alert, still unwavering. She knew she owed her life to these animals, and something far more profound than that. These dogs had turned what could have been a tragedy into a story of survival. Not through force. Not through chaos. But through discipline, instinct, and an unwavering sense of duty. For the woman, the world felt different now. The city, once ordinary and predictable, now seemed alive with possibilities. She had experienced the extraordinary, the quiet heroism of 14 canine dogs who didn't just respond to danger, they chose to protect her. And for everyone else, a lesson had been made clear: bravery can take many forms. Sometimes it comes on 4 legs, with eyes that see beyond panic and hearts that act without hesitation. As the crowd began to settle, curiosity turned toward the 14 dogs who had saved the day. Who were they? Where had they come from? How had they known exactly what to do? The answer was as remarkable as their actions. These were trained canine units, professionals of the canine world, each one rigorously prepared for scenarios most people could never imagine. Each dog had undergone months, sometimes years, of training. They had been taught to assess danger, to follow commands without hesitation, to protect and prioritize human life above all else. Individually, they were incredible. Together, they were a force of coordination and instinct that seemed almost supernatural in its precision. Yet what struck everyone most was that their loyalty, their protective instinct, had emerged without direct human command. Somehow, in the chaos, they had recognized the vulnerability of the elderly woman. They had acted as one, forming a protective circle without being told to, without hesitation, without question. Some of the dogs belonged to local law enforcement. Others had been called in from neighboring units. A few had even recently returned from specialized training exercises. All were different breeds, ages, and temperaments. Yet they moved as a single organism, their instincts finely tuned to the unspoken needs of the person in their care. And then, as quickly as they had appeared, some vanished into the background once the danger passed. Others lingered nearby, quiet guardians until the very last moment. It wasn't about recognition or reward. These dogs weren't performing for applause. They weren't heroes because of medals or fame. They were heroes because of instinct. Because of training. Because of the pure, unyielding bond that exists between humans and dogs, a bond that doesn't need explanation, only trust. In that moment, everyone watching realized something profound. Courage is not always human. Loyalty is not always spoken. And protection, sometimes, comes on four legs with eyes that see beyond fear. These 14 canine dogs weren't just trained. They were extraordinary. And the woman? She would never forget the faces of her guardians, the way they had moved as one, the way they had stood between her and danger. For her, their names didn't matter. Their breed didn't matter. What mattered was that they had chosen her, and that choice had changed everything. It wasn't just luck that the 14 canine dogs had protected the woman so effectively. There is science behind it, behavior shaped by evolution, instinct, and rigorous training. Dogs are pack animals. Their survival depends on reading signals, understanding hierarchy, and acting as a unit. Even domesticated dogs retain these instincts. They notice things humans often miss: changes in body language, tension in the air, subtle shifts that signal danger long before we realize it ourselves. When a human is vulnerable, their instincts kick in. Dogs assess the situation quickly, prioritizing who needs protection. The elderly woman in the street, frozen and exposed, triggered a protective response that overrode every other impulse. Training amplifies these instincts. K9 units spend months learning how to react to chaos. They learn to assess threats calmly, to position themselves strategically, to form protective perimeters, and to communicate silently with one another. Combine instinct with training, and the result is a force that is precise, intelligent, and incredibly loyal. And yet, it's not all technical. There's an emotional intelligence at play. Dogs bond with humans in a way that allows them to sense fear, hesitation, or vulnerability. They feel it, and they respond, not because they're ordered to, but because they care. This extraordinary synergy of evolution, instinct, and training is why the 14 canine dogs were able to form a protective circle around a single person in the middle of chaos. It's also why, in stories throughout history, dogs have repeatedly saved lives, not because they were told to, not for recognition, but because they understood, in a way we cannot fully explain, that someone needed them. And in that city street that day, the science of canine behavior met the heart of loyalty. The result was nothing short of miraculous. The chaos had passed, but its echoes lingered. For the elderly woman, the world felt forever changed. She had faced a moment that could have ended in tragedy, yet she survived, not because of luck, not because of human intervention alone, but because 14 canine dogs had chosen to protect her. She thought about what had just happened. About fear, and courage, and loyalty that didn't ask for anything in return. About lives saved, not by strength alone, but by instinct, training, and heart. She realized something profound: not all heroes wear uniforms. Some have paws, keen eyes, and hearts that understand without words. For the crowd and the authorities, the event was unforgettable. Shock turned to awe. Panic had given way to gratitude. People spoke quietly, reverently, of the discipline, intelligence, and bravery they had witnessed. And the dogs? They didn't linger for praise. Their mission was complete. Their presence had changed the course of events. And in their silent, watchful way, they had reminded everyone of something humans sometimes forget. Courage isn't measured by size, speed, or strength. It's measured by loyalty, presence, and willingness to act when it matters most. The woman carried that memory with her, the warmth of protection still surrounding her in her mind. She knew she had been given a gift few ever experience, a glimpse into the extraordinary bond between humans and dogs, and the reassurance that, even in our most vulnerable moments, we are never truly alone. It was a story she would carry forever, a story of fear transformed into safety, panic replaced by calm, and despair turned into awe. Because that day had shown her, and everyone who witnessed it, the power of instinct, training, and unwavering loyalty. Moments like these remind us that true heroism often comes quietly. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it watches, waits, and protects without expecting anything in return. 14 canine dogs, trained yet instinctive, had shown what courage and loyalty really mean. They had stood between danger and a vulnerable human, proving that bravery is not limited to humans alone. So, we ask you, what would you do if someone you loved needed protection? Could you stand as steadfastly as these dogs did? If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you see dogs in a new light, take a moment to show your support. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts or stories of extraordinary dogs in the comments below. And remember, sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms. Sometimes, they have paws, a keen gaze, and the heart to protect without hesitation. Because courage doesn't always come from strength. It comes from loyalty, instinct, and love. Stay tuned for our next story, where more incredible dogs show us the extraordinary ways they touch our lives every single day.